Victory. Ethan stood abruptly. You let us think everything was gone. Daniel shrugged again. I didn't owe you operational updates. Miranda leaned forward. You owed us honesty. Daniel's jaw tightened. Business isn't emotional. There it was. The dividing line. To him, this had always been numbers. To Ethan and Miranda, it had been trust. And now you want our house, Ethan said slowly. It's a good investment, Daniel replied smoothly. I know the area. I know the comps. I know your urgency. Urgency. He said it like leverage. Like he could smell desperation. Miranda's eyes flashed. We're not desperate. Daniel smirked faintly. Then don't sell. It was a challenge. Not a suggestion. Ethan looked at Miranda. Something shifted in his expression. Clarity. Resolve. He turned back to Daniel. Offer rejected. Daniel blinked. You haven't even negotiated. We're not selling to you, Ethan said firmly. Daniel's expression hardened. That's emotional. Yes, Miranda said sharply. It is. Daniel stood slowly. Business is business. And family is family, Ethan replied. Daniel gave a thin smile. Good luck covering the mortgage. And he walked away. The cafe felt quieter after he left. Miranda exhaled shakily. I want to scream. Ethan sat back down slowly. I can't believe I trusted him. I placed my hand gently on his shoulder. You trusted the version of him you wanted to see. Miranda nodded faintly. We almost handed him our house. But you didn't, I said. And that matters. On the drive home, silence filled the car. But it wasn't panic anymore. It was clarity. At the house, Oliver ran to the door when we entered. Grandma! He hugged my legs tightly. And something about that simple gesture reminded me, homes aren't just property. They're protection, memory, stability. Daniel wanted more than square footage. He wanted control over the narrative. But Ethan had just taken it back. That evening, Ethan called the realtor. Take the house off the market. At Sunday dinner, my son squeezed my hand 3 times. Our old signal that meant, Dad, I'm in trouble. I had almost forgotten about that signal. 3 squeezes. That's all it took. 3 quick squeezes of the hand. It was something my son and I invented when he was 10 years old. A secret code we used whenever he felt scared or needed help but couldn't say it out loud. But that night, the Sunday dinner, when his hand suddenly squeezed mine 3 times under the table, I realized something was terribly wrong. Our family had a tradition. Every Sunday evening we gathered at my house for dinner. It started when my wife Linda was still alive. She believed that no matter how busy life became, family should always sit at the same table at least once a week. After she passed away 5 years ago, I kept the tradition alive. Not for me, for them, for my son Daniel, for his wife Melissa, and for my little granddaughter Emma. Those dinners were the one moment every week when everything felt normal again. But that Sunday, nothing felt normal. Melissa arrived first carrying a casserole dish. She always brought something fancy, lasagna, roasted vegetables, homemade bread. Hi, Dad, she said with a bright smile. She hugged me quickly and walked into the kitchen. Behind her, Emma ran inside. Grandpa! She jumped straight into my arms. I lifted her up and spun her around. How's my favorite girl? She giggled. I'm your only girl. That's why you're my favorite. She laughed loudly. For a moment, everything felt perfect. Normal. Peaceful. Then Daniel arrived. My son looked tired. Not just tired. Drained. His shoulders were tense. His eyes looked darker than usual. Hey, Dad, he said quietly. He hugged me, but the hug felt different. Short. Distracted. Like his mind was somewhere else. You okay? I asked. Yeah, he said quickly. Too quickly. I'm fine. But I knew my son. And something was off. Dinner began like it always did. Emma talked nonstop about school. Melissa told us about her new job at a marketing company. I listened, smiling, nodding. But Daniel barely spoke. He pushed food around his plate, checking his phone, looking at the door. looking at Melissa, looking nervous. And then it happened. Melissa got up to refill everyone's glasses. Emma followed her to the kitchen. For a few seconds, it was just me and Daniel at the table. He looked at me, really looked at me, like he was trying to say something. Then he reached under the table and grabbed my hand. At first, I thought it was just a casual gesture. But then, squeeze, 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 3 times. My heart stopped, because I remembered exactly what that meant. 20 years earlier, Daniel was a small boy, quiet, sensitive. One day at school he was being bullied, but he didn't want to tell the teacher, so we invented a signal. Whenever he squeezed my hand 3 times, it meant one thing: Dad, I'm in trouble. And now, after 20 years, he was using it again. I looked at him carefully. He didn't say anything. He didn't even look at me again. But his face had turned pale. And then Melissa returned to the table. Instantly Daniel let go of my hand, like nothing had happened. Dinner continued, but my mind was racing. Why would my son use that signal again? What kind of trouble was he in? Was it money? His job? Something else? Every few minutes I caught him looking at Melissa, not lovingly, nervously, almost cautiously, like he was afraid of her. That thought made my stomach tighten. Halfway through dinner, Melissa smiled and said, "Daniel told me you're thinking about selling the house." I looked at my son. That was news to me. "I never said that," I replied calmly. Daniel quickly looked down at his plate. Melissa laughed lightly. "Oh, maybe I misunderstood." But something about her tone felt strange. Too smooth, too controlled. Emma suddenly spilled her juice. Melissa stood up quickly. "Emma, be careful." Her voice snapped sharply. The little girl froze, her eyes filled with tears. "It's okay," I said gently. "It's just juice." But Melissa was already grabbing napkins, cleaning aggressively. Her smile was gone. Her face looked cold. For the first time that evening, I noticed something unsettling. Daniel wasn't comforting Emma. He wasn't even looking at her. He was staring at the table, silent. Later that night, after dinner ended, Melissa and Emma went to the car first. Daniel stayed behind, just for a moment. He hugged me goodbye, and when he did, he whispered something so quietly no one else could hear. "Dad, don't trust her." Then he walked out the door, leaving me standing there, frozen, because suddenly that 3-squeeze signal made terrifying sense. My son wasn't just stressed. He was afraid, and the person he was afraid of was his own wife. But what I didn't know yet was that the truth about Melissa was far darker than I could ever imagine. And within a few days, our entire family would be pulled into a nightmare none of us were prepared for. After Daniel whispered, "Dad, don't trust her," he walked out of the door like nothing had happened. I stood there in the hallway for several seconds, staring at the closed door. The house suddenly felt too quiet, too heavy. For years, Sunday dinners had been the safest moment of the week for our family. But now that memory felt cracked, like something dark had slipped inside without anyone noticing. I slowly walked to the window and watched Daniel get into the car. Melissa was sitting in the passenger seat. Emma was in the back, playing with her tablet. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Daniel started the engine. For a brief moment he looked toward the house. Our eyes met through the window. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just looked worried. Then the car drove away. That night I barely slept. Daniel's words kept repeating in my head. Don't trust her. It didn't make sense. Melissa had been part of our family for almost 8 years. She was polite, organized, responsible, maybe a little strict sometimes, but nothing alarming. At least that's what I thought. But the fear in Daniel's voice, that was real. And the 3-squeeze signal wasn't something he would use lightly. Not after 20 years. The next morning I called him. He didn't answer. I tried again an hour later. Still nothing. That wasn't like Daniel. He usually returned calls quickly. I sent him a message. "Everything okay?" No reply. Now the uneasiness started turning into something heavier. Concern. maybe even fear. Around noon, my phone finally buzzed. It was a message from Daniel. "Can't talk right now. I'll call later." That was it. Short, careful, almost like he didn't want to write too much, which only made things worse. That afternoon, I decided to do something simple. I drove to their house, not to confront anyone, just to check. Sometimes you can learn more by observing quietly than by asking questions. Their house was only 15 minutes away. When I arrived, Daniel's car wasn't there, but Melissa's car was. I sat in my car across the street for a moment, watching, thinking, trying to decide whether I should knock on the door. Just then the front door opened. Melissa stepped outside. She was talking on the phone. Her voice was low, serious. I couldn't hear the words, but I noticed something strange. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't acting like the cheerful person from Sunday dinner. Her expression looked sharp, focused, almost cold. She paced across the driveway while talking. Then suddenly she stopped and said something louder. I caught only a few words. "I told you he doesn't suspect anything." My stomach tightened. Who was she talking about? Daniel? Or someone else? After a moment, she went back inside. I sat there, my thoughts racing. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I misunderstood. But Daniel's warning echoed again in my head. Don't trust her. Something about this didn't feel right. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I knocked on the door. Melissa answered a few seconds later. She looked slightly surprised to see me. "Oh, Dad," she said quickly. "What a surprise." Her smile appeared instantly, but it looked forced. "I was in the neighborhood," I said casually. "Thought I'd stop by and see Emma." Her eyes flickered for just a moment. Then she stepped aside. "Of course. Come in." Emma ran into the hallway the moment she saw me. "Grandpa." She hugged me tightly. "How's school?" I asked. "Good." Melissa walked toward the kitchen. "I'm making lunch," she said. "Stay as long as you like." Her voice sounded pleasant again, but something felt off. I couldn't explain it. Just a feeling. While Emma showed me her drawings at the table, I watched Melissa carefully. She moved around the kitchen quickly. Too quickly. Like someone who was anxious. At one point she opened a drawer and quickly closed it when she noticed me looking. Then she smiled again. "Daniel said he might be late tonight," she said casually. "Oh," I replied. "Yes, work stuff." But something about that explanation felt rehearsed. Like she had said it before. Many times. After lunch, Emma went to her room to play. Melissa poured herself coffee and sat across from me. For a few seconds we were both quiet. Then she leaned back slightly. "You and Daniel seemed serious last night," she said. I looked at her calmly. "Just talking." She studied my face carefully, like she was searching for something. "About what?" she asked. Her tone was light, but her eyes weren't. I shrugged. "Life." She smiled again, but this time the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Well," she said slowly, "Daniel has always been very sensitive." Sensitive. That word bothered me. "He worries too much sometimes," she continued, "about things that aren't real." Now I understood what she was doing. She was planting a thought, trying to shape how I saw my own son, trying to make him sound unstable. That alone raised a red flag in my mind. Just then my phone vibrated. A message from Daniel. "Dad, are you home?" I quickly replied. "No, I'm at your place." There was a long pause. Then another message appeared. "Leave. Now." My heart started beating faster. I stood up slowly. "Well," I said, "I should get going." Melissa looked surprised. "So soon?" "I just remembered I have an appointment." She stood too, walking me to the door. Her expression was polite again, but something about her gaze felt watchful, like she was studying every movement. "Tell Daniel I said hello," she said. "I will." As I stepped outside, the cool air hit my face. I walked to my car and drove away. Only after turning the corner did I check my phone again. Another message from Daniel had arrived. "Did she say anything strange?" I replied. "Why?" His answer came quickly this time. "Because, Dad." I think she's watching everything I do. A chill ran down my spine. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Daniel. I answered immediately. Daniel, what's going on? His voice sounded tense. Did she know you were coming? No. He sighed quietly. Good. Son, you need to tell me what's happening. There was a long silence on the line. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. Dad, I think Melissa is hiding something. What kind of something? Another pause. Then he whispered, I think she's lying about who she really is. The words hung heavy in the air. Daniel, what are you talking about? I'm not sure yet, he said. But things don't add up. What things? Money. Phone calls. People I've never met. My mind started racing. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I wasn't sure, he replied. And if I'm wrong, it could destroy everything. But you're not wrong about one thing, he continued quietly. What? She's dangerous. Those words sent a cold wave through me. Dangerous. This wasn't just a marriage problem. This sounded like something much bigger. Before I could ask another question, Daniel suddenly said, Dad, I have to go. Why? I think someone's here. Who? But the call ended. Just like that, leaving me staring at my phone, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Real fear. Because if Daniel was right, then whatever secret Melissa was hiding was only beginning to reveal itself. And the next time I saw my son, everything would change. Because someone else already knew the truth about Melissa, and they were about to show up at my door. At Sunday dinner, my son squeezed my hand 3 times. Our old signal that meant, Dad, I'm in trouble. The call with Daniel ended so suddenly that I kept staring at my phone for several seconds, waiting for it to ring again. But it didn't. Instead, the silence in my car felt heavier with every passing moment. I think someone's here. Those were the last words my son said before the call dropped. My mind started racing. Who could be there? Melissa? Someone else? And why did he sound so afraid? I tried calling him back immediately. The call went straight to voicemail. That had never happened before. Daniel always answered. Always. Unless something was very wrong. I drove home faster than usual, my thoughts tangled with worry. When I pulled into my driveway, the sun was already beginning to set. The house looked the same as it always had. Quiet, peaceful. But inside me, nothing felt peaceful anymore. I stepped inside, locked the door, and tried Daniel again. Still voicemail. I left a message. Son, call me back as soon as you can. Then I sat down in the living room, staring at the family photos on the wall. One picture caught my eye. Daniel at age 10. The same year we created that signal. 3 squeezes. Back then it was about school bullies. Now, I had no idea what kind of danger he was facing. About 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. The sound startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the door carefully and opened it. A man in a dark jacket stood outside. He looked to be in his mid-40s. Serious expression. Sharp eyes. Mr. Harrison? He asked. Yes. My name is Mark Reynolds. He held up a badge. I'm a private investigator. That was the last thing I expected to hear. A private investigator? I repeated. Yes. And why are you here? He glanced behind me briefly, making sure no one else was inside. I need to talk to you about your daughter-in-law. My stomach tightened immediately. Melissa, come in, I said slowly. We sat at the kitchen table. Mark placed a small folder on the table. Before I show you anything, he said calmly, I need to ask you a question. What is it? Has your son mentioned anything unusual about his wife recently? I thought about Daniel's words. She's dangerous. She's hiding something. Yes, I said quietly. He has. Mark nodded slowly. That's what I was afraid of. He opened the folder. Inside were several photographs. He slid the first one toward me. It showed Melissa, but she wasn't alone. She was standing with a man I had never seen before. They were outside a building somewhere in the city. What is this? I asked. That photo was taken 2 weeks ago, Mark said. They met 3 times that week. Who is he? Mark leaned back slightly. That's what you need to understand. He pulled out another photograph. This one showed Melissa entering a different building late at night. Another man was with her. Not Daniel. Someone else entirely. My chest tightened. Are you telling me she's having an affair? Mark shook his head. No. His voice became more serious. It's much worse than that. He slid another paper across the table. It wasn't a photograph. It was a document. At the top was a name. Melissa Carter. But underneath it was another name. Alias, Melissa Grant. My eyes narrowed. What does that mean? Mark looked directly at me. It means Melissa Carter isn't her real identity. The room felt suddenly colder. What are you saying? I asked slowly. I'm saying your son's wife has been using multiple identities for years. I stared at him in disbelief. That's impossible. I wish it was. He opened another page in the folder. This is a record from 5 years ago. The document showed a police investigation. Fraud. Financial manipulation. Fake identities. My heart started beating faster. You're saying my daughter-in-law is a criminal? Mark didn't answer immediately. Instead, he said something even worse. She's part of something bigger. I leaned forward. What kind of something? An organized financial scheme. Like a scam. Exactly. My head began spinning. How does Daniel fit into this? Mark sighed quietly. That's why I'm here. He pointed to one of the photos. This man Melissa met 2 weeks ago? Yes. He's been involved in several financial fraud cases. My stomach dropped. And your son, Mark continued, has recently become connected to large financial transactions through his job. Daniel worked in corporate finance. Suddenly the pieces started forming a terrible picture. You think she married him for money? Yes, Mark said simply. The room fell silent. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I asked the question that scared me the most. Is my son in danger? Mark looked at me carefully. Yes. The word felt like a punch to the chest. But not in the way you think. What do you mean? He leaned forward slightly. If Melissa's operation is what I believe it is, your son may unknowingly be connected to illegal transactions. I felt sick. You mean she could frame him? Exactly. Suddenly Daniel's fear made perfect sense. The nervous looks, the secrecy, the warning. Don't trust her. He had discovered something. Something dangerous. Just then my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. My heart jumped. I opened it quickly. The message was short. Dad, I found something. Then another message appeared. I think Melissa has been using my work accounts. I showed the phone to Mark. He read the message carefully. Then his expression became very serious. This is bad. How bad? Very bad. Before I could ask another question, my phone rang. Daniel again. I answered instantly. Daniel. His voice sounded breathless. Dad, I checked my work records. And there are transactions I never approved. My heart pounded. How much money? He hesitated. Millions. The word echoed in the room. Millions. Mark leaned closer to hear the conversation. Daniel? I said carefully. Are you safe right now? I don't know, he whispered. Why? Because Melissa just left the house. My stomach tightened. Where did she go? I don't know. Then Daniel said something that made the situation even worse. But Dad, before she left, she took my laptop. Mark's expression immediately changed. That's very bad, he whispered to me. Covered the phone. Why? Because if she realizes Daniel knows the truth. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Daniel, I said quickly, listen to me. What? You need to leave the house. Why? But before I could explain, Daniel suddenly whispered something that froze my blood. Dad, I think she's coming back. My heart stopped. What? I hear the car. Daniel. But the call ended. Again. The room felt silent and heavy. I looked at Mark. What do we do? He stood up immediately. We go there. Now? Yes. Why? Because his next words made my blood run cold. Because if Melissa knows Daniel discovered the truth. He grabbed the folder. Your son might not be safe tonight. As we rushed toward the door, one terrifying thought kept repeating in my mind. This wasn't just about lies anymore. It wasn't just about fraud. It was about survival. And if we didn't reach Daniel in time, the 3-squeeze signal might be the last message my son ever sent me. The moment Daniel said, "Dad, I think she's coming back," the line went dead. For a second, I just stood there with the phone in my hand, frozen. Then Mark grabbed his jacket and headed toward the door. "We have to move," he said. My heart was pounding. What if we're too late? Mark didn't answer. That silence scared me more than anything. We drove to Daniel's house faster than I had ever driven before. The streets blurred past the windows. Every red light felt like torture. Every second felt too slow. My mind was filled with terrifying possibilities. What if Melissa had already discovered that Daniel knew? What if she had taken his laptop to erase evidence? Or worse, what if she was planning something even darker? Daniel's voice echoed again in my mind. Millions. If she had been moving that kind of money through his accounts, then this situation was much bigger than we thought. And people involved in crimes like that rarely left loose ends. Did Daniel ever confront her? Mark asked while driving. I don't think so, I replied. He sounded scared. Mark nodded. That's actually good. Why? Because if she doesn't know he knows, he still has leverage. Leverage. The word felt fragile, like something that could disappear in seconds. When we finally reached Daniel's neighborhood, my heart started beating even faster. Mark slowed the car as we turned onto his street. Daniel's house came into view. The lights were on, and Melissa's car was parked in the driveway. Mark stopped the car a few houses away. Wait, he said. What? We don't rush in. But Daniel. I know, he said calmly. But if Melissa is involved in something illegal, she might panic if she sees us. He looked at the house carefully. We need to see what's happening first. We watched the house for several minutes. Nothing moved. No one came outside. No lights turned on or off. Everything looked quiet. Too quiet. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I'm going in. Mark sighed. All right, but we go. Together. We walked toward the house quickly but quietly. Every step felt heavier. When we reached the front door, I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. My chest tightened. Daniel! I called through the door. Silence. Mark tried the door handle. Turned. Unlocked. He looked at me seriously. Stay behind me. My stomach dropped. Unlocked doors rarely meant good news. We stepped inside slowly. The living room lights were on. Everything looked normal at first glance. The couch. The coffee table. Emma's toys scattered on the floor. But the house felt tense. Like the air itself was holding its breath. Daniel! I called again. Still nothing. Then we heard voices. From the kitchen. 2 voices. Daniel's. And Melissa's. They were arguing. Quietly. But intensely. Mark motioned for me to stay silent as we moved closer. The voices became clearer. You went through my computer, Melissa said coldly. Daniel's voice sounded tight. I wanted the truth. What truth? The truth about the money. Silence followed. Then Melissa laughed softly. It wasn't a warm laugh. It was sharp. Dangerous. You should have minded your own business, she said. My accounts were used for millions of dollars, Daniel replied. That makes it my business. Another silence. Then Melissa spoke again. You were never supposed to notice. My heart skipped a beat. She wasn't even denying it. What were you doing with my accounts? Daniel demanded. Moving money. For who? Melissa didn't answer immediately. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. For people you don't want to know. Mark glanced at me. His expression said everything. This was bigger than we thought. Much bigger. I'm going to the police, Daniel said. Melissa's chair scraped against the floor. You won't. Watch me. Daniel, she said calmly. Think carefully. Her voice had changed. It sounded threatening. Those transactions went through your credentials, she continued. If anyone investigates, guess whose name appears? Daniel didn't respond. Yours, she finished quietly. The realization hit him hard. You framed me. No, she said softly. I protected myself. Daniel's voice shook with anger. You used me. Yes. The word hung in the air. Cold. Simple. Cruel. Mark whispered to me. This is the moment. What moment? The moment when people become desperate. Before I could respond, something crashed in the kitchen. A chair fell over. Daniel shouted. Give me the laptop. Melissa's voice turned sharp. Stay back. Mark rushed forward. I followed. When we entered the kitchen, the scene froze us both for a moment. Daniel stood near the table. Melissa was across from him, holding something in her hand. A small black device. Mark's eyes widened. Put that down, he said firmly. Melissa turned toward us. Her expression changed instantly. Cold. Calculating. Well, she said slowly, this is unexpected. Daniel looked shocked. Dad, are you okay? I asked. I think so. But his eyes were locked on the device in Melissa's hand. What is that? I asked. Mark answered quietly. A signal jammer. My confusion must have shown. It blocks phone signals, he explained. No calls. No internet. My stomach dropped. She had planned this. Melissa smiled faintly. You brought a guest, she said, looking at Mark. Who are you? Someone who knows exactly what you've been doing, Mark replied. Her smile faded slightly. Is that so? Yes. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then Melissa slowly placed the device on the counter. You're making a mistake, she said calmly. Daniel laughed bitterly. No, Melissa. The mistake was trusting you. She looked at him carefully. You think you understand what's happening. Then explain it, Daniel said. Her eyes moved between all of us. Then she said something none of us expected. You're already too deep in this. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? It means, she said quietly, even if I disappear tonight, the damage is done. The room felt suddenly colder. What damage? I asked. Melissa looked directly at me. Your son's name is connected to every transaction. Daniel's face turned pale. And tomorrow, she continued, those accounts will be audited. Mark stepped forward. You're bluffing. Melissa shook her head. Am I? She looked back at Daniel. You think I used you? Her smile returned. I needed you. Daniel stared at her. For what? For the perfect cover. Then she said the one thing that made my heart stop. Because when the investigators start asking questions tomorrow, she paused. Your son will look like the mastermind. Daniel whispered one word. Why? Melissa picked up her purse slowly and answered with chilling calm. Because someone has to take the fall. Before anyone could stop her, she moved toward the door. Mark rushed forward. Don't move. But Melissa just smiled. You're already too late. She opened the door and walked out into the night, leaving us standing in the kitchen, realizing that Daniel's life had just been turned into a trap. And the worst part? The investigation she mentioned would begin in less than 12 hours. The front door slammed behind Melissa. For a moment, none of us moved. Daniel stood frozen in the kitchen, staring at the open doorway where his wife had just disappeared. The silence felt heavy, dangerous. Then Daniel suddenly rushed outside. Melissa, he shouted. I followed him onto the porch. But the street was empty. Her car was already gone. She must have left seconds after walking out. Daniel ran down the driveway, looking around desperately. She's gone, he said quietly. Mark stepped beside him. Yes. Daniel clenched his fists. She can't just disappear. Mark sighed. People like her are very good at disappearing. We went back inside the house. Daniel looked exhausted. Not just physically, emotionally, like the ground beneath his life had suddenly collapsed. He sat down at the kitchen table and ran his hands through his hair. I married her, he whispered. I trusted her. I placed a hand on his shoulder. You didn't know. That doesn't change anything, he said. She used my name, my job, my accounts. Mark pulled a chair closer. Daniel, we need to talk about the investigation she mentioned. Daniel looked up. You believe her? Yes, Mark said calmly. People involved in financial crimes rarely bluff about investigations. Daniel leaned back slowly. So tomorrow someone might come here, thinking I'm responsible for millions of dollars. Mark nodded. That's a real possibility. My stomach tightened. Then we go to the police tonight, I said. But Mark shook his head. That might not help. Why not? Because from the outside perspective, Daniel's credentials were used for every transaction. Daniel exhaled slowly. So I look guilty. Yes. For several minutes no one spoke. The reality of the situation was slowly settling in. Melissa hadn't just betrayed Daniel. She had built an entire trap around him. And now she was gone, leaving him to face the consequences. Finally, Daniel said something surprising. There's something you should know. Mark looked at him carefully. What? Daniel stood up and walked toward the living room. Come with me. We followed him. He knelt beside the couch and reached underneath it. After a moment, he pulled out a small black flash drive. Mark's eyes narrowed. What's that? Daniel held it tightly. My insurance. I looked confused. Insurance? Daniel nodded slowly. 3 weeks ago, I started noticing things that didn't make sense. Like what? I asked. Strange login alerts on my work accounts. Large transfers scheduled late at night. And emails I didn't remember sending. Mark leaned forward. So you started investigating? Yes. Daniel plugged the flash drive into his laptop. The screen lit up. Folders appeared. Dozens of them. Mark's eyebrows rose. You've been busy. Daniel nodded. I copied every suspicious transaction I could find. He opened one of the folders. Rows of financial records appeared. Transfers. Account numbers. Dates. Large numbers. Very large numbers. Mark studied the screen carefully. Then he let out a slow breath. This is huge. How huge? I asked. Millions of dollars moving through shell companies. Daniel nodded. And every transfer eventually leads to the same network. Which network? I asked. Daniel clicked another folder. A list of names appeared. Companies. Accounts. Aliases. Mark's expression changed. Oh no. What? I asked. Mark pointed at the screen. These companies are already under investigation. My heart skipped. By who? Federal Financial Crime Units. Daniel looked stunned. So Melissa was already on their radar? Mark nodded slowly. It looks that way. Daniel leaned back in his chair. So she used me as a shield? Yes, Mark said quietly. If investigators followed the money trail, it would lead directly to you first. Daniel shook his head. She planned everything. But suddenly Mark noticed something else on the screen. Wait. He leaned closer. What? Mark pointed to one of the documents. This account. Daniel looked at it. What about it? Mark's face turned serious. This isn't just any account. Then whose is it? Mark answered quietly. A political campaign fund. The room fell silent. I blinked. You mean government money? Possibly, Mark said. Daniel looked shocked. You're telling me this could involve politicians? Mark nodded slowly. If that account is connected to what I think it is, this case just became much bigger. Daniel leaned back in his chair. So Melissa isn't just part of a scam. No, Mark said. She might be part of a larger financial laundering network. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Dangerous. Suddenly Daniel's phone buzzed. All three of us looked at it. Unknown number. Daniel hesitated. Answer it, Mark said quietly. Daniel pressed the button. Hello. For a moment he didn't speak. Then his expression changed. What? I watched his face carefully. Confusion. Shock. Then fear. Who is this? Daniel asked. The voice on the other end was faint but firm. "We need to talk about your wife." Daniel glanced at Mark. "Who are you?" The voice replied calmly. "My name is Agent Collins." Mark straightened immediately. "Put it on speaker," he whispered. Daniel did. "Mr. Harrison," the voice continued, "this is the Federal Financial Crimes Division." My heart skipped. "Federal investigators. Already. We need you to come in tomorrow morning," Agent Collins said. Daniel swallowed. "Am I under arrest?" "No." "Then why do you want to see me?" There was a short pause. Then Agent Collins said something unexpected. "Because we believe you might be the key witness in a major investigation." Daniel blinked. "A witness?" "Yes." Mark nodded slightly. That was good news. Very good news. But Agent Collins wasn't finished. "There's something else you need to know." "What?" Daniel asked. "We've been tracking Melissa Carter for over a year." Daniel's eyes widened. "Then why didn't you stop her?" "Because," the agent replied calmly, "we were trying to find the people above her." A chill ran down my spine. Above her, meaning Melissa wasn't the leader. She was just a piece of something bigger, something far more dangerous. Agent Collins continued. "And tonight, she disappeared." Daniel looked at Mark. Mark nodded. "Yes," Daniel said. "She left about 20 minutes ago." The agent sighed. "That's what we were afraid of." "Why?" "Because if she runs now," he paused, "it means the people behind her know we're getting close." The room felt colder than ever. Daniel whispered, "What people?" Agent Collins answered quietly, "A network that launders millions of dollars through corporate systems." Daniel looked at his laptop. "At systems like mine?" "Yes." Then the agent said something that made the situation even more terrifying. "And Mr. Harrison, if Melissa believes you have evidence against her," Daniel's grip tightened on the phone, "you might be in danger." The call ended a few minutes later. The room fell silent again. I looked at Daniel. He looked at the flash drive. Then at Mark. "What do we do now?" Mark answered simply, "We prepare." "For what?" Mark's voice became serious. "For the moment when Melissa realizes you're working with the investigators." Daniel frowned. "And then?" Mark's eyes hardened. "Then she might come back." A cold feeling ran through my chest. Because if Melissa returned, it wouldn't be to talk. It would be to silence the only person who could destroy everything she had built. My son. That night none of us slept. Not really. Daniel sat at the kitchen table for hours, staring at the laptop screen where the financial records were still open. Millions of dollars. Hundreds of transactions. And somehow his name was attached to almost all of them. Every time I looked at him, I saw the same little boy from 20 years ago. The boy who invented that signal with me. 3 squeezes. "Dad, I'm in trouble." Back then I could fix everything with a conversation with a teacher. Now the trouble was something far bigger. And far more dangerous. Mark stayed at the house that night. "If Melissa realizes Daniel has evidence," he said, "she may try to come back." Daniel shook his head slowly. "She won't come back." "You'd be surprised," Mark replied. "People protecting something this big don't leave loose ends." Daniel looked at the flash drive sitting on the table. "I'm the loose end." Around midnight the house finally went quiet. Emma was asleep in her room. Daniel sat in the living room while Mark checked the locks. I walked through the house slowly, turning off lights, trying to calm my mind. But every small sound outside made my heart jump. Car doors, footsteps, wind against the windows. Every noise felt suspicious. At 2:17 a.m., Daniel's phone buzzed. The sudden sound echoed through the quiet house. We all looked at it. Unknown number. Again. Daniel looked at Mark. Mark nodded. "Answer it." Daniel pressed the speaker button. "Hello." For a few seconds there was only silence. Then a familiar voice spoke. "Daniel." "Melissa." Daniel's face went pale. "Where are you?" he asked. Melissa laughed softly. "You always ask the wrong questions." Mark whispered, "Keep her talking." Daniel nodded slightly. "What's the right question then?" Melissa replied calmly. The right question is, why are federal investigators suddenly interested in you? Daniel's eyes flickered toward Mark. So you know about them. I know everything, she said. The room felt tense. Dangerous. Melissa, Daniel said slowly. This can stop right now. Oh, she replied. Yes. Explain. Turn yourself in. For a moment there was silence. Then Melissa laughed again. This time the laugh sounded colder. You still don't understand the situation. And what situation is that? Daniel asked. You think I'm the one in danger. She paused. But Daniel, you're the one standing in the middle of a storm. Mark scribbled something on a piece of paper and showed it to Daniel. Ask where she is. Daniel nodded. Melissa, where are you right now? Another pause. Then she answered something unexpected. Outside. My heart skipped. Outside? Mark immediately stood up and looked through the window. The street looked empty. But suddenly headlights appeared at the end of the road. A car slowly turned the corner and began moving toward the house. My stomach dropped. She's here, Mark whispered. Daniel's voice shook slightly. Melissa, what are you doing? Her voice came through the phone calmly. Finishing things. The car pulled into the driveway. The engine turned off. Mark moved quickly. Stay behind me, he said. Daniel stood frozen near the table. I could see fear in his eyes, but also determination. A moment later the front door handle moved. Once, twice, then the door opened. Melissa stepped inside slowly. Her expression looked calm. Too calm. She was holding her purse in one hand. The other hand remained hidden inside the coat pocket. Good evening, she said quietly. No one spoke. The tension in the room was suffocating. Melissa looked at Daniel first, then at me, then at Mark. Ah, she said. So you brought help. Mark stepped forward slightly. It's over, Melissa. She tilted her head. Is it? Yes. Interesting. She slowly pulled her hand out of her coat pocket. For a split second my heart stopped. But it wasn't a weapon. It was her phone. She held it up. Do you know what this is? She asked. Daniel frowned. A phone. No, she said softly. It's leverage. She pressed something on the screen. Suddenly Daniel's laptop made a notification sound. Mark rushed to the computer. What did you do? Melissa smiled faintly. Insurance. Mark's face turned serious. She just triggered a data transfer. Daniel stepped closer. What kind of data? Mark looked at the screen. Then at Melissa. You're sending the financial records. Exactly, she replied. Daniel's voice rose. To who? Melissa's smile widened. To the investigators. The room went silent. None of us understood. You're exposing yourself? Daniel asked. No, she said calmly. I'm exposing you. Mark shook his head. That won't work. Melissa raised an eyebrow. Why not? Because Daniel already gave us the evidence. For the first time, Melissa's expression changed. Just slightly. Daniel lifted the flash drive from the table. This. Melissa stared at it. You copied everything? Yes. Mark added calmly. And the federal agents already know. Melissa's confident smile faded. For the first time that night, she looked uncertain. Then suddenly red and blue lights flashed through the window. Police cars. Several of them. Melissa turned toward the window. Her eyes widened. No, she whispered. Mark crossed his arms. They've been on their way for 10 minutes. The front door burst open. Federal agents. Nobody move. 3 agents rushed inside. One of them stepped directly toward Melissa. Melissa Carter, you're under arrest for financial fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. Melissa stood frozen. The confident criminal mask she had worn all night finally cracked. As they placed handcuffs on her wrists, she looked at Daniel. You ruined everything. Daniel shook his head slowly. No, you did. The agents escorted her toward the door. But before leaving, she looked back at Daniel one last time. You think this is over? She said quietly. But the people behind this, she smiled faintly, they're much bigger than you. Then she was gone. The flashing lights disappeared down the street a few minutes later. The house finally felt quiet again. Daniel sat down heavily on the couch. His entire body looked drained. It's over, he whispered. Mark nodded. For tonight. The next morning Daniel met with the federal investigators. The flash drive contained enough evidence to prove he had been manipulated. Within days, the investigation expanded. Multiple arrests followed. Shell companies were exposed. Millions of dollars were traced. And Daniel's name was cleared completely. Weeks later, we sat at my house again. Sunday dinner. The same table. The same chairs. But the atmosphere felt different. Lighter. Safer. Emma laughed while telling us about school. Daniel looked relaxed for the first time in months. At one point, he reached across the table and shook my hand. For a moment, I remembered that signal again. 3 squeezes. But this time, there was only one. A simple squeeze. Then he smiled. Thanks, Dad. I smiled back. Because sometimes the smallest signals can save someone's life.
Subscribe on my channel.